Rain poured hard on the tin roof of the orphanage. The sound echoed through the cold, quiet hallways like a sad lullaby. Inside one of the smallest rooms, a little girl named Elsie sat on her bed, hugging her knees. Her brown eyes stared at the window as water streaked down the glass like silent tears. She had turned 15 the week before, but no one celebrated. No cake, no hugs, not even a simple happy birthday. Elsie had been at the orphanage since she was 2. Her parents had died in a car accident, and no one from her family came to take her. She grew up among strangers, some kind, many not. Over the years, many couples visited the orphanage, hoping to adopt. They smiled at the younger children, carried the babies, and asked the same question again and again. Who's the youngest child here? But no one ever asked about Elsie. She was quiet, too quiet for some. She didn't laugh loudly or jump around like the others. She had learned to stay out of the way, to hide her feelings, and to smile even when her heart was breaking. When new visitors came, she sat on the far bench, just hoping someone might look her way. But they never did. One day during lunch, a girl named Nora, who had been adopted the year before, came back with her new family. She wore a pretty pink dress and shiny black shoes. The other girls gathered around her like bees to honey. I live in a house with 3 bedrooms and a garden, Nora said proudly. We even have a dog. Everyone clapped and cheered. Elsie smiled from a distance, but said nothing. She was happy for Nora, but her own heart ached. Would she ever have a home like that? Later that evening, Matron Helen called. A meeting. She was the head of the orphanage and had been in charge for over 20 years. Tomorrow we'll be having guests, she said. A charity group is coming to see how they can help us. The room buzzed with excitement. Some girls whispered about new clothes or better food. Others hoped someone rich would offer to adopt them. Elsie didn't say anything, but deep down, a small part of her heart dared to dream again. The next morning, the sun finally came out. The orphanage staff worked hard to clean everything. The girls wore their best clothes. Elsie wore a simple blue dress with a little rip near the hem. It was the only dress that still fit her dot when the charity group arrived. They were all smiles. There were photographers, volunteers, and a few people with clipboards. The girls lined up in the yard. They sang songs and performed a little dance. Everyone clapped. A tall man in a beige suit and a woman with curly brown hair walked around talking to the children. The woman gave out sweets. The man asked questions like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" But again, no one came near Elsie. After the crowd moved inside, Elsie stayed in the yard, sweeping leaves under the big mango tree. She was so busy working that she didn't notice someone watching her. From across the fence, his name was Daniel. He had come with the charity group, not as a volunteer, but just as a guest. He was a quiet man around 30 years old, with kind eyes and a notebook in his hand. While others focused on the show inside, he had noticed Elsie, the girl in the blue dress who didn't sing or dance but swept the yard with quiet strength. There was something about her that touched him. She looked lonely, but not bitter. Sad, but not angry. She looked like someone who had waited too long to be seen. After a while, he walked over. "Hi," he said gently. Elsie turned, surprised. "Hello, what's your name?" "Elsie." "That's a lovely name," he said with a warm smile. Why weren't you inside with the others? I didn't want to, she answered softly. Daniel nodded, then looked around. You? Like being alone? Not really, she admitted, but I'm used to it. He was quiet for a moment, then asked, Do you have any dreams, Elsie? She hesitated. No one had asked her that before. I want to be a teacher someday. I like reading, and I want to help children learn. Daniel smiled. That's a beautiful dream. Just then, Matron Helen called out, Elsie, come in now. Yes, ma'am. Elsie replied and looked back at Daniel. It was nice talking to you. He nodded. Same here. She walked away, not knowing that something had just changed. Not knowing that for the first time in her life, someone truly saw her. Later that day, Daniel asked to speak privately with Matron Helen. He had questions, many questions about Elsie, her background, her habits, her health. Matron Helen answered each one honestly. Why do you ask? She said at last. Daniel paused. Because she reminds me of someone I once lost. That evening, Elsie sat by the window again. The rain had started falling once more, and the yard was empty. She thought about the man with the notebook and his kind eyes. She didn't know his name, but she remembered how it felt to talk to someone who actually listened. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. Not because she sang the loudest, not because she was the prettiest, but because finally someone had truly seen her, someone who cared, and maybe, just maybe, someone who would bring love where there had only been rejection. The next morning at the orphanage started like any other. Bells rang at 6 o'clock sharp. The girls got out of bed, brushed their teeth, and lined up for breakfast. Porridge again. No sugar, no milk, just the same watery bowl they had every day. Elsie didn't complain. She never did. She just sat quietly in the corner and ate slowly, her thoughts still on the man she had met the day before. She didn't even know his name, but the way he spoke to her had left a warm feeling in her. Just after breakfast, she went to the library, a small room with old books and wobbly chairs. Most of the girls didn't like reading, but it was Elsie's favorite place. She picked up a book about teaching children to read and started flipping through it. Just then, Matron Helen entered the room. Her shoes clicked loudly on the floor. Elsie, she said in a sharp voice. Yes, ma'am? Elsie stood up quickly. Come with me. Someone's here to see you. Elsie blinked. Me? Yes, hurry. Elsie followed her through the hallway, heart pounding in her chest. Was it a mistake? Had she done something wrong? When they reached the office, Matron Helen opened the door, and there he was, the man with the notebook, the one who had talked to her by the mango tree. Hello, Elsie, he said with a gentle smile. Do you remember me? She nodded. Yes, sir, my name is Daniel. Matron Helen gave a nod and closed the door, leaving them alone. Daniel pointed to the chair across from him. Please sit. Elsie sat, nervously holding the hem of her dress. I hope it's all right that I came back, Daniel said. I wanted to talk to you again. She looked up, her eyes wide. Why me? He took a moment before answering. Because I saw something in you, something special. You didn't ask for attention, but you deserved it. You work hard, you're kind, and you have dreams. That matters. Elsie didn't know what to say. No one had ever said words like that to her. Daniel reached into his bag and brought out a new notebook. He passed it across the table. "This is for you. I know you like reading, and maybe you like writing too." Elsie touched the notebook gently. The cover was smooth, and the pages were clean and white. "Thank you," she whispered. "I also wanted to ask." Daniel looked her in the eye. "Would you like to spend a day with me outside the orphanage just for a visit? I have permission from Matron Helen." Elsie's eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes, we can go to the city. I'll show you a bookshop, a nice park, maybe get you something to eat. No pressure, only if you want to." Elsie hesitated. She had never left the orphanage with someone before, but something in her heart told her she could trust him. "I would like that," she said. That afternoon, for the first time in years, Elsie stepped out into the world beyond the orphanage gates, with someone who actually wanted her company. The car ride was quiet at first. She had never ridden in a private car. Daniel played soft music on the radio, and after a few minutes, Elsie began to relax. In the city, everything was new and bright. Cars honked. People laughed. Street vendors called out to customers. Elsie looked through the window like a child, seeing magic for the first time. Their first stop was a bookstore. As they stepped inside, a wave of cool air and the smell of fresh paper welcomed them. "You can pick any 2 books," Daniel said. "Really?" she gasped. "Anything you like." She walked through the aisles slowly, carefully running her fingers along the spines of books. She finally chose one about becoming a teacher and another storybook for children. When they left the shop, Daniel took her to a quiet park nearby. They sat under a tree, and he brought out 2 meat pies and 2 small bottles of juice. Elsie ate with quiet joy. The food was warm and full of flavor, not like the bland meals at the orphanage. "Tell me about your life," Daniel said after a while. Elsie looked down. "There's not much to say." "I'd like to hear anyway." So she told him about her parents, about growing up in the orphanage, and how people came and went, but no one ever chose her. She told him about her love for books, her dream of teaching, and how it sometimes felt like no one believed in her. Daniel listened quietly, never interrupting. When she finished, he said softly, "You are stronger than you know, Elsie. You've gone through so much, yet you still dream. That's not small. That's brave." Tears filled Elsie's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. "I don't want to cry." "It's okay if you do," he said, but she didn't. She just smiled. A small, real smile as the sun began to set. They walked slowly back to the car. "Will I ever see you again?" she asked. Daniel paused. "That depends on what?" "On whether you'd like me to come back." She looked up at him. "Yes, I would." They returned to the orphanage just before evening roll call. The other girls stared as Elsie stepped out of the car with 2 books in her hands and a glow on her face they had never seen before. Later that night, Elsie sat by the window again, the new notebook in her lap. This time she didn't stare at the rain. She wrote about the man named Daniel, about the park, the bookstore, the food, and the feeling of being seen and heard. She wrote about hope. And for the first time her heart whispered something new. Maybe love doesn't always come from family. Maybe sometimes it finds you through a stranger, a kind one, someone who chooses to care. 2 weeks passed since the day Elsie spent with Daniel. She thought about it every single moment. his soft voice, the bookstore, the laughter at the park, and most of all, how it felt to be treated like she mattered. She hadn't seen him since that day, but something had changed in her heart. She walked taller. She smiled more. She even helped some of the younger girls with their reading. One evening, while helping 6-year-old Fola sound out letters from a storybook, Matron Helen entered the room with a letter in her hand. Elsie. She called. Elsie stood quickly. "Yes, ma'am?" "You have a visitor," the matron said, trying to keep her voice calm, though the corners of her lips tugged into the tiniest smile. Elsie's heart skipped. She followed Matron Helen down the hallway, her palms sweating. In the office, Daniel stood by the window, dressed in a blue shirt and simple jeans. When he turned and saw her, his eyes lit up. "Hello, Elsie." "Hi," she replied, her voice soft but filled with joy. "I have something important to talk to you about," he said, nodding toward the chair across from him. She sat slowly, waiting. Daniel looked nervous. He rubbed his hands together and took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot since the last time we met about you, about what you shared, and about what kind of life you deserve." Elsie stared at him, unsure what he meant. "I live alone." Daniel continued. "I work from home as a writer. My days are quiet. My house is small, but warm. And I've been feeling for a while now that something is missing." He looked directly into her eyes. "I'd like to adopt you, Elsie, if you'll let me." Elsie froze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She wasn't sure she had heard him right. You want to adopt me?" she whispered. Daniel nodded. "Yes, I spoke with Matron Helen. I've started the process. I've met with social services, done the interviews, and filled out all the papers. I can't promise to be perfect, but I can promise to care for you, support your dreams, and be the person who never walks away." Tears filled Elsie's eyes. She had dreamed of this moment so many nights, but now that it was here, it didn't feel real. "Why me?" she asked. "There are so many others, younger, prettier, happier." Daniel leaned forward. "Because you are you, Elsie. Because you have a strong heart. Because you've faced so much and still choose kindness. Because the world didn't choose you, but I do." The room was silent except for the soft ticking of the wall clock. And then Elsie nodded. Double quotes. "Yes," she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Yes, I want to go with you." Daniel smiled, his own eyes shining. He reached across the table and gently took her hand. It was the first time in her life someone held her hand, not out of pity, but out of love. The adoption process took a few more weeks. Daniel visited the orphanage every other day. They talked, read books, and even made lesson plans for the students Elsie dreamed of teaching someday. The younger girls looked up to her even more now. Some of the older ones soft too. For the first time, Elsie felt seen, not just by one person, but by many. When the day finally came, she packed her few belongings into a small suitcase. She took her notebook, her 2 new books, and a photo of her parents that she had kept hidden under her mattress for years. Matron Helen hugged her for the first time. "You've always been a quiet light, Elsie. Go and shine brighter." Elsie smiled through her tears. Daniel waited by the gate. His car stood parked under the same mango tree where they had first spoken. As Elsie walked toward him, he opened his arms wide. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. more than ever. Life with Daniel was simple but beautiful. Elsie got her own room with white curtains and a small desk for writing. Daniel enrolled her in a nearby school and bought her first school uniform. On weekends they visited libraries, parks, and sometimes the beach. They cooked together, laughed often, and even adopted a kitten named Pebbles. But more than anything, Elsie began to feel something new, a deep, quiet peace. She was no longer the orphan girl who sat in corners. She was no longer the one everyone overlooked. Now, she was Elsie, a daughter, a student, and a young girl full of dreams that felt real. One afternoon, while Daniel worked in his study, Elsie sat on her bed writing in her notebook. She wrote the words slowly, carefully, just the way they lived in her heart. Once I was the girl nobody wanted, but one stranger saw me. He didn't walk past, he didn't turn away. He stayed, and through him, love found me. She closed the notebook and hugged it tight. Love, she had learned, doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, with a smile, with a question, with a hand stretched out under a mango tree. And when it does, it changes everything. The end.